zázraků. Někdo řekl by, je to ráj, jo, jenže já tam byl. Každý tam má neustále dobrou náladu. Neslyšel jsem nikdy říkat, já mám vztek. Chceš-li tam mít, musíš znát i jednu zásadu. Každý v sobě cestu skryl, je dlouhá mnoho mil. Já tam byl, já tam byl, já tam byl, já tam byl. Zeptej se mě, dám ty svědectví. Nejen láska usíná. Kde je cesta zpátky do dětství? Ve tvých očích začíná. Já tam byl. Já tam byl. Stal jsem se tam svědkem spousty lidských zázraků. Nepotkal jsem smutek, závist ani pláč. Viděl jsem tam nebe stále modré bez mraků. Někdo řekl by, je to ráj, jo, jenže já tam byl. Každý tam má neustále dobrou náladu. Neslyšel jsem nikdy říkat, já mám vztek. Chceš-li tam mít, musíš znát i jednu zásadu. Každý v sobě cestu skryl, je dlouhá mnoho mil. Já tam byl, já tam byl, já tam byl, já tam byl.
I have listened to, I have imagined, I have followed practically all the available talks and speeches and commentaries of John Lash on his Sophianic myth, the fallen goddess scenario. I have made 2 videos about my interpretation of it, and the main strain or main source of similarity between his vision and mine is the work of Nietzsche. No? Nietzsche was central. That he writes in his introduction, he's going to complete Nietzsche's work, which didn't go far enough because his criticism of Christianity and of the Semitic mythogem, as Mr. Lash defines it, didn't go far enough because Nietzsche simply would state, this is madness, this is an illusion and a necessary illusion of a dying, let us say, race, of a degenerating race, which creates a narrative out of necessity to go on living as as I have hinted in the first talk. But Mr. Lash has the narrative that this is not only madness, that it reflects a certain cosmological, ontologically happening events of the Sofia Aeon daring plunge into the third arm of the galaxies, and a mistake and preconceived event in the cosmic realm of the cosmic forces, that these acrons are not created, because it was not an intention of the Sofia loving kindness or daring passion to become more than an aeon, to become the whole planet. After all, being a surge of white energy, immortal and all-powerful and creative, is not such a kick as being, the tigers, the butterflies, and living all the lives of all the evolutionary stages of plants and animals, and being the rivers and lakes and mountains, and being all the lovers of the human species that have experienced this tremendous kind of passion in writing poetry and playing backhand and forehand and skiing and riding on horses and rising up to the mountains and sailing on beautiful Aegean seas under red sails and black sails, and whatever has happened in the human history. And this Sofia is it. She experiences all, even the power of earthquakes and winds and the stormy seas and the calm seas and the sun dancing on water and the full moon. I'm not really sure about the moon. Did the moon arose from the body of the earth, from the body of Sofia? I would suppose so. Or was it a foreign object that crashed into the earth and so on, and then out of the debris, through the gravitational force of the Earth's moon, was shaped, which would be the same as part of it came from cosmos and part of it came from the body of Mother. Okay, let's make a big question. So the same source to plunge into this search for a new narrative against the Semitic mythogem is the work of Nietzsche, also from me. But I have another source. I have the Minoan Crete narrative, and I have, above all, the Minoan Crete body and soul experience for about 20 years, because I have spent many winters there on the Lassity Plateau and on the east coast around Agios Nikolaos, and then on the south coast near Karl Limenes. I'm traveling extensively all around. But mainly then in the last years, staying in one place and performing spontaneous rituals on the shore of the Libyan Sea and on the balcony which looks over the Libyan Sea directly to Africa, which is not to be seen actually, it's too far away, but not so far away, it's some 300 kilometers. You can imagine the pyramids, in Egypt. Whereas John Lash has spent his time in Andalusia and close to Gibraltar, overlooking the sea to North Africa. And as far as I have so far noticed, he does not mention the Minoan narrative very much. He sees it as one of those ethnic groups that have the mother mythogem in it as a memory or as an intuition of the Sofia Gaia fall or plunge. What is important to know is that the Minoan narrative is much older than the Semitic. Yeah, and before the Greek, before the Hellenic time, Minoan Crete, and before the Semitic time, Minoan Crete was a highly developed culture. And the Semitic cultures, they come from this Saharasia band of suffering in the dry lands of Arabia, Jordan, Palestine, and so on. And the Indo-European cultures that come from Asia, basically, are already patriarchal at the very beginning, at the core of their homeland, somewhere in today's Russia, between the Ural Mountains and the Baikal Sea. They are very strongly patriarchal. Military, warrior caste, and women are viewed as either somebody who stays behind in the yurt, and is cooking and raising children, and then warriors run around and on horses and destroy extensively everything that they encounter extensively, and they move once in 200 years somewhere else because they have hunted all down and they have killed all enemies and they have used all resources. So this is not a very loving approach to Mother Earth. And they moved then some 200 kilometers to the west from the heart of Asia, or to the south if possible, and they destroyed the Dravidic population on the Indian continent, that would later become Indians, are Indo-Europeans. The Dravidic population is defeated, destroyed, exterminated probably, and then they move on, and they found or they give the rise to the all Persian and Mesopotamian cultures that are also very patriarchal, pyramidic form of government by elites and forces, and then they move on to what we today know as Hellas, as Greece, and then they stop when they reach the Peloponnese, and they, like with open mouth, they stand 500 years on the shore of Peloponnese in the south, looking at the Libyan Sea, and are blocked because they cannot sail. They don't know the sea. So far as they have been marching only on the continent on their horses. And for 500 years they have to make a break in their expansion, and they just only see in the mists of the morning and the golden sun. They see the majestic ships of Minoan Crete that have been sailing for 2,000 years, since about 3,000 BC to 1500 BC, without parallel beauty, power, and knowledge, and were guided by the priestesses of the Great Mother on Minoan Crete. Also were experts in navigation. They knew the stars. They knew the healing ceremonies using plants. They were very flexible, let us say, in sports. See them jump over the Minoan bull. They were experienced in meditation or concentration techniques. They were the original Aloysius. Aloysius is a memory that was kept, and that started on Minoan Crete. So we could say on Minoan Crete, this mythogem of Mother Goddess, Sofia, was experienced for thousands of years without any admixture of the patriarchal cultures. And there was not the necessity to fight against this. So we could say, even if we would look at the Sofia narrative as a mythogem, one variation of explaining the cultural development and biological development on Earth, we would skip the acherons. They would never exist, no? Because it was not necessary. I am fascinated by John Lash, and I want to communicate with him, and I feel as a part of this ongoing Gnostic experiment, but I must, contribute that what I know, or what I have experienced. As I've said, I have been taken by the Mother Gaia, Goddess, in her, let us say, aspect of the starry goddess, to the center of the galaxy from the shore of Crete. And interestingly enough, it was the year 2003, as John Janda, I have heard now his description of his experiences in Andalusia, where he lived like hermit, wandering through those wide landscapes. And must say, I was also in Andalusia on a very different mission, which maybe would illustrate our differences and our common approach. I love the landscape, naturally, but I was there as a private tennis teacher, as a warrior expert, on a inland farm or an inland. It was a kind of holiday resort of some rich German who rented the houses there and cottages to tourists, and he had a tennis court, and he would like to play tennis, but he didn't have partners among the guests. So he had an advertisement in the tennis magazine in Germany, looking for a partner for tennis to play one day, every day, one match with me and live for free on my premises in Andalusia. So immediately, as an adventurer, I went and I did it. Did it beautiful, beautiful. But what was my mistake? I didn't understand that this guy is a patriarchal type of psyche. He wants to win. And he wants to win at any cost. And the people who he hires should be smart enough to lose. I never lost, which made him angry. And above all, as I watched him play with his wife, I noticed that he is, oppressing her, that he's beating her, in tennis game, without telling her how she could improve. And she saw that I always beat him. So she was interested how I do it, and she asked me to give her some lesson. And I did it. And she really improved because, I'm a good teacher. And then she started to be equal to him, and he got very angry. And he threw me out on the pretense that I have found a stray dog one day in the evening in front of my cottage. And as a lover of animals, I could not simply let him there outside and hungry. So I took him in and I gave him some food. And the next morning, this angry guy comes and throws me out. Well, it was it. It was the end of my Andalusian exercise. I then had a pilgrimage because I didn't have much money. So I walked and hitchhiked from that place inside Andalusia, inland, to Malaga. And then I took a bus to, I think it was to Zurich, or an airplane, I don't know. But I had to call my that time sponsor, my former girlfriend in Germany, say, I cannot get back, please send me some money. Because my baggage was even stolen before the airport and stuff like that, suffering. Okay, forget it. This is just a story of how I entered Andalusia and how I was helping a woman, a kind of late descendant of Sofia, to learn the warrior techniques to fight against her patriarchal husband. And how I suffered because of that. After that time, I started to visit either the Canary Islands in the winter, also very powerful nature and also very powerful local mythology of some mother goddess, and then I settled on Crete for the winters and for the summers in Germany and Austria and so on, to make money as a physiotherapist. So let's get back to the comparison of mythogems. On Minoan Crete, there was this mother goddess, but she was not an otherworldly god. She was not a kind of Sophianic entity living in the center of the galaxy as an aeon, and then plunging to the empty space and creating the earth, becoming one with it. She simply was, and what we say, a psychological projection of the Minoans, who loved nature and the wind and the sea and had a peaceful artistic culture. It is well known that the Minoans didn't build any fortresses. Their palaces were open. This is an insular culture, so they were protected by the sea, and women somehow naturally became the priestesses, because the fertility of the land can be invoked and taken care of by fertile animals, human animals, and that are women. So there was this great mother goddess as a morphogenetic field, let us say, as the sum of all morphogenetic fields of all winds, seas, mountains, plants, animals, and men and women. It was growing directly out of nature and out of the emotional experiences and perceptual experiences of all living organisms. I try to defend this narrative of mine against the narrative of Janda Lash and see if it can succeed, even though I feel fascinated as a warrior by his narrative and as a lover of science fiction in my young days, but I preferred the Russian science fiction. Like if you can read the book The Hour of the Bull of Yefremov, you should read it. Somebody who made Avatar, it's Nolan, this regime. I think he was considering to make it to a movie, but he said it is too difficult, too complex, too great. So this Russian science fiction of the writer is Ivan Yefremov, and I think it is called The Hour of the Bull, which is a kind of positive science fiction without any monstrous and evil entities that somehow try to invade the earth. And the story goes like at the end of the capitalist era, which we live now in, we could transfer it to the present moment. At the end of this period, where the rich and elitists and the bosses of the corporations and maybe some of the evil agenda of the banksters, is what you call them, they simply run the planet to the ruins, which could be said in the language on Mr. Lash that they are acting on the delusion of this demented patriarchal God narrative. So, living without the occurrence and the cosmological perspective, nevertheless, they could be demented, degenerated, and this is in accordance with Nietzsche, that culture simply, after some time, exhausts its generative power and begins to degenerate. The degenerated defend themselves by using the modern technology. In the past epochs of the declines of empires, the technology was not so monstrous as it is today. So today, the degenerate class that becomes mad fights for its survival and destroys almost the planet. In the narrative of Yefremov, it happily does not finish like that. The forces of life, people all around the world, the normal people simply say, no, we are not going to follow these idiotic commands of some elite, several thousands on the planet who command us how to live. We shall simply not do it. And there comes a revolution, and this elitist group, counting several thousands, they have the resources and they have the rockets and space vehicles, and they depart from the earth, and they get into some cosmic whirlwinds, and they are thrown far, far away from the planet Earth into some corner of the galaxy, and find a planet that is similar to Earth, and they can settle down and they live. Okay, so this is the narrative, so that you have something interesting. Much, much later, when the Galactic Federation is, patrolling all galaxy and everything lives in a kind of enlightened, scientific way, there comes some message from a probe into the distant corner of the galaxies that they have found a civilization unlike all others, and because the shape of the intelligent being is humanoid, they inform the humanoid part of the Galactic Federation, and there it becomes evident that these are descendants somehow from the planet Earth. And the story of the book goes then that the delegation from the planet Earth of a highly advanced astronaut travels there to connect and offer help. And interestingly enough, the leader of this astronaut is a kind of imposing female figure of a Soviet astronaut at that time, who simply could be a kind of cosmic Sofia coming from the sky to this planet, because she's very well educated and she is a master of spiritual and meditation techniques and all kinds of bodily techniques, and so. And then the book, which I will not explain to you in detail, you should read it, describes this confrontation of these two cultures, because on that distant planet, which is called Tormans, from the Russian verb tormozit, which means to break, to slow down, to hinder. Tormans is the planet where this kind of patriarchal power-dominated and oppressing culture type has been prolonged and has achieved maximum of oppressing a few in the elite control the rest of the population. And there certainly is a kind of plot to make it adventurous, that the visitors from the Earth connect to some underground revolutionaries and so on. So this was just a detour to make this story interesting. We return back to Minoan Crete. because I notice Mr. Lash is a good narrator. He takes time to narrate his stories, and he obviously has the ability of visionary description. That's why it does not go fast. And I have many lectures about this kind of pictorial, visionary, authentic speaking and thinking, which we cannot call it thinking in concepts. It is describing visions, or intuitions. That's why it is slow in a certain sense, because first the image, first the vision, and then the names, then the words for it. I follow the same method and I improve it according to my interpretation by this bardic improvisation on guitar, which makes me, depart sometimes into purely vibrational ecstasies, because the guitar is resting with its neck and head, sometimes with its belly on my brow. So, okay, what if Minoan mythogem gives rise to the mother goddess as a kind of egregor, as it's called in modern esoteric? Men and women on Minoan Crete live in a small paradise without violence. They love nature, motion, dance, food, color, handcraft, animals so much that they all together project a kind of morphogenetic field of their souls into this mother goddess energy egregor, what it called it, collected soul experiences, phenomenal soul experiences of all the inhabitants of Minoan Crete since 3500 BC until 1500 BC have 2000 years of bliss, and they can condense these experiences, these phenomenal experiences can condense to a large informational field that is then called the Great Mother. And the Great Mother has her daughters in every rock and every mountain and every brook and every river and on each shore and each holy grove, because Crete at the time was covered with woods. It was only later in the 16th century that the Venetians have cut down the trees to build ships for business, trade, and war. So we have this, and in every locality there is the presence of the Great Mother is to be felt. They were sailing on ships on parallel beauty all through the Eastern Mediterranean, made colonies on the islands, Cycladic islands to the north. Even Troy seems to be an outpost of the Minoan culture. They sailed to Sicily, and without an army, they dominated the Mediterranean, the Eastern Mediterranean, by, their beauty and quality of goods. We don't need at all some Semitic mythogem. it's not yet existent. And in my interpretation, which I have collected through university studies, not only through mystical experiences, what happens then that the expansion of the Indo-European barbarian hordes of men on horses slowly reach the Mediterranean. Okay. They could not expand to the south completely in the eastern part of Asia because there was China, which is even older than Egypt and Minoan Crete, 5,000 years old. And China was strong at that time. And one professor who was a curator, who was an advisor during my journeys to Crete, I had two professors, one of the German university here in Constance, Mr. Baude, who specialized in the study of old Middle East cultures. And I had one philosopher at the University of Prague, Mr. Milan Machovec, who specialized in the study of Minoan Crete and Christianity in its positive aspect. And they all, I got to know Ludwig Klages and Bachofen from the German professor, and I studied Ludwig Klages and Jakob Johann Bachofen, who proved by industrious study of the surviving documents and myths that there really was a matrimonial culture in the Eastern Mediterranean far, far earlier than the patriarchal Mycenaean and later Hellenic and Greek and then Roman culture. And then the clash of the Roman culture with the Semitic. It all comes much later. And the Czech professor pointed out in one of his books that to survive in Europe as a culture, we have to learn from ancient Crete, and we have to learn from the original Taoist monks in China, because both of them lived practical, phenomenal experience of love of nature without any external gods, without any cosmic narrative that somebody creates us, human beings, or the earth, or whatever. It's simply because the water is flowing and the Chinese Taoist old masters are standing above a waterfall in a kind of meditative state. They exercise Qigong. The morphogenetic field of their soul is expanding and merging with the field, with the informational field of the soul of waterfall. No? According to Whitehead, all elementary conglomerates like rivers, waterfalls, lakes, mountains, winds, and so have an informational field, have a kind of soul, and may be experienced by a human soul when it dissolves the narrowing center of attention, which is the human ego. The human ego narrows the field. Spatially seen, the field of the soul is a kind of, pulsating amoeba-like cloud that can enlarge itself, pulsating and grow far away, and stretch far away from the physical body of each human being. And in children it is definitely so. There is no ego in small children. And artists and mystics in ecstasy. It is definitely so also that they have a large kind of plasticity and openness of the soul field. But what is important, the soul field does not expand on the command of the will of the individual, human, animal, or any other animal, because there is no ego which would, direct it, which would have desire and the personal will to expand somewhere. The driving force that takes care of this expansion is a motherly, drawing, kind of magnetic force of a larger field. The larger field, like the waterfall, where the monk is standing there, the Taoist monk, and exercises Qigong in a state where his ego is dissolved, is automatically drawn into the field of the waterfall. You must imagine it like two software clouds merging, and the smaller cloud is being naturally drawn to a greater cloud on condition that they are similar in the sense that there is sympathy. And then the software merges, and since it is all the time connected with the body of the monk, of the wise man, of the hermit exercising Qigong, close to the waterfall, it changes his body. Because the body of a human animal, to use John Lamblash's description for the human being, is an expression of his individual soul. And as the individual soul is upgraded, enlarged, and structurally enhanced by the morphogenetic field of the waterfall, then his respective body molecules that are watery take on some quality of the clear mountain water, which means what? Great health, which Nietzsche was so celebrating, the midday and the great health we need for the new epoch in which the Superman, warrior type man will be the ruler, or not the patriarchal ruler, but he will be the magnet that will draw all the admiration towards him. And when there will be more of them, they will have a kind of temple and a school, and by admiration, this is what they will do. They will be admired by all the young humans, animals, whatever, and they will be drawn. So this attractive force of being drawn into is different from the center, narrow, beam of willpower of all patriarchal centers of power that want to dominate and control and hit, if necessary, by commands and by bullets, if necessary. Even the shot of a gun is a symbolic picture of the willpower, because it is directed exactly. I am already so disgusted with all the American science fictions and adventure films. There's so much shooting, so much aiming, yeah? And anybody who's shooting or aiming completely loses the awareness for the whole, because he must narrow his mind to the target. Okay. So we have mentioned the great health and the midday, Nietzsche's concepts of the paradigm change. And yet we have to mention one which I am missing slightly in John Lash's narrative. This is the triad: camel, lion, and the child. In Zarathustra, these are the three stages of the Superman, of the complete man, because the Superman is nothing else than, we could say, in John Lash terms, this is the genome designed by Sofia in the play Roma, that has these 7 qualities, 7 attributes, that they are completely initiated, fulfilled, incarnated in one individual. This is the Superman. In Nietzsche's conception, epigenetics, and again we come to this similarity with Lash's Sofia correction. Sofia correction is a change in the epigenetics. In Nietzsche's conception, it is a lucky throw of epigenetics, that these kind of perfect human beings are born all the time when the genetic game of their parents leads to this lucky throw, but they do not mature. Mostly they do not develop to a full bloom, because there are so many hindrances. Either there is some stupid relative which destroys the young boy and the young girl, or there is some stupid politics and religion and school system which does not develop their abilities, or there is some shortage of nourishment in early age, or there is some directly war going on, and by chance this young hopeful animal is killed. That is why the Superman is an exception. The Superman would not be an exception if the world government was in the hands of those who matured as Superman, and this would be the aspect in Lash's call for the warrior caste of the Sophianic Knights of the Round Table to unite. The advantage Lash's narrative has, that there is this tremendous force of the creator, she-creator, Sofia Gaia, who helps us from one side, and so there will be a great victory, because she is mother of them all, and she can make such a genetic correction that those who belong to the level humanoid 10 will not be able to transfer to the level of humanoid 11, and sheer by the dying out, they will be removed passively without violence. Now to the triad child, the end of the camel and lion sequence, it's obvious, no? First stage is a camel, that is, you have to study, you have to read, you have to be one in the pack of the caravan, you carry a load, you simply obey the orders, and you have your books on your back, you study universities and so on. Then you have the base, and if you are strong and individual, and if you really study with the intention to understand it fully, and if you point out to illogical, steps, then one day you will say, shit, I know so much, but I don't live it in reality. So you will leave the caravan, you shout, you morph, you transform your symbolic body into a lion, and you run away to the mountains. And there you live, everyday life. You try to survive using your abilities, your knowledge, and see if you can succeed. If you are lucky, and if you really have learned good skills, both in handcraft and farming and healing, and as I have been a professional sportsman, and then physiotherapist, and then studied philosophy and art, and became an artist also, then you will find always some means of survival, even if you work simply on the farm just to get food and place to sleep. This is what you have to accept. I say that shortage of resources is the necessary condition for shaping the soul of a warrior. If everything is given to you on a golden spoon, you degenerate, even if you were genetically a warrior. Or you become proud and arrogant because you have too much of everything and you did not deserve it, you didn't produce it. Naturally, the best solution is if there is a tradition, which Nietzsche admired in the Romans, that your parents and your grandparents are successful, rich, and they prepare for you everything what you need, but at the same time, they are extremely conscious of this fact that you have to experience harsh conditions. So they send you into harsh conditions, or they provide to you the best training of the best trainers in some sports, and so that are very strict and harsh and demand, and don't, say, yes, he is the man of our son of the rich man, I have to, be easy with him. Woo! That would be a great thing. As Nietzsche says, the responsibility of the elite warrior class means that the successive generations must be trained very sophisticatedly and strongly and harshly bodily, because soul, according to Nietzsche, is the emanation of the body. For us, it is a bipolar unity, soul and body, so soul can always also influence the body, and the education in arts, in passive devotion, admiration of beauty, is on the same level as the harsh training of the body. And even it both connects in a kind of expressive ritual motion in nature, like Qigong, on the waterfall, close to the waterfall, or the sunrise on a high mountain, or on the shore of the sea. Then it is, the fulfillment of the Superman. And the child. Now come to the child. After he has fulfilled, a break is necessary.
edge of fear.
Was used to change the position of the guitar. Now it is with its belly on my bra, and I play with the other hand. Now, so far I was hitting the strings with my left hand, fingers. Now with the right hand. So the child, after he has achieved all this, mastery of the body motion, mastery of the mental techniques and wisdom, collecting conceptual, cognitive wisdom, after he has achieved that, what Lash would call the mastery of the intellectual gnosis, new gnosis, Nietzsche's Superman feels the necessity of becoming a child, which would be interestingly to discuss in relation to the Sophianic myth of Mother Gaia Sophia. Because is she a mother? Yes. And would not she love children, her children, who really understand her children, that is grown-up men, warriors, who nevertheless can become children, and then out of necessity. This is the Nietzsche's great joker in his metaphysics. Everything happens out of necessity. That which must not happen can be only pretended or the halfway, and it will not have the real effect. Only those processes and experiences that are necessary in the sense that they are growing out of the roots of life, and the roots are becoming a stem and branches, and everything which hinders this life will be overcome by necessity. If it is a weak life, then it will not overcome the hindrances and will die. So the child, when it manages to be the last flower on the tree of life of a warrior and a student, the camel and the lion, necessary, will draw attention of mother to itself. And to be creative without any gods, even without the Sofia mother, in Nietzsche's concept, to be really creative as a superhuman being, you need to have this freedom of a child. Once again, don't care about absolutely nothing or anything. What is the English grammar correction? Simply fly, improvise musically, bodily, artistically, in beautiful nature, and see what comes. One of the archetypes is simply you get on a bike and go, and don't ask me, as the German romantic poet Eichendorff say, and as Nietzsche says, get on the ship and sail to the distant unknown seas without knowing what it will bring, but you are strong bodily and you know a lot cognitively, and all this, will become a prison if you don't use it in your individual way, in adventure. So Nietzsche means the adventure is the highest form of life for the heroes, because it brings everyday new surprises, new landscape, new human stories to be involved in. Whereas the concept of wisdom and power radiating from one place, this is after the great secret has been solved and great forces of power have been opened and mastered. You can stay in one place and radiate this power and have the pilgrims come and pay devotion. Is it not slightly a patriarchal form of power? Isn't it not as something that is valid for the middle period of some paradigm where the power is solidified and the education of the young adepts is the main reason of existence for this temple? But at the end of the paradigm, children open must go out and live the authentic life of surprises in the open nature or the open space of the planet. What is this all about? That I am circling around an intuition, an idea and desire that I have to explain the Sofia narrative without any intention of, degrading it, but explaining without the cosmological ontology, without the plunge of some beam of energy, without the unnecessary or mistaken arousal of the acrons, without the connection of the Semitic narrative with these acrons, simply by natural psychological procession of man evolution on the planet Earth. No? Why? No, am I afraid of this? Or does it seem to me slightly hysterical? I don't know. I have naturally encountered evil and have had beautiful periods of my life destroyed. There have been great losses. There have been some terrible moments of almost dying and so on. But I always come out of that. This is what Nietzsche calls the great plastic power of the body. Due to my early training as a warrior in the last Spartan school of Europe, now, what is it? Last Spartan school of warrior. Now, these were the centers of professional sport in Eastern Europe under the socialist regime, where a project was started to select the most able youth, young boys, and send them to these training centers and give them all the possible resources and nourishment and health care and training so that they could become a socialist heroes and show the degenerated capitalist heroes on the Olympic ground that they are better, and they really were better, because the capitalist system of sport has always this intrusion of money and personal relationships. Né? Either you need the money to start, or you need a recommendation of somebody who is already in power in the training center. So you will not find the best. Whereas the socialist system was test all children without exception and take the best without regard to their origin, and give them all the resources. Give them also the freedom to say no, and give also the freedom to their parents to say no. This was done in my country, which was not Russia or East Germany. It was the old center of Gnostic power, Prague, the capital of Bohemia, which is loved and by Terence McKenna, which is the scene of the last possibility of a different Europe, 1621, before the 30 Years' War, an attempt of the Bohemian Protestant to change the course of Europe to more tolerant ways, which also is the center of the Rabbi Levi, the mythological or legendary constructor of the first robot, the Golan. And I myself have been guiding tours on one of the last surviving Jewish cemeteries in the Prague Old Town, and I was putting little stones on the tomb of Ben Levi, Yehuda Ben Levi, the priest and the knower of Kabbalah, because the legend says that if you put a stone on his tomb, the mental power of his wisdom and knowledge will absorb it and realize it. So, derivation, detour to the socialist Prague of 1960s and 70s, which I say was not that which Mr. Lash is criticizing as the communist idea and the Marxist kind of idea of leveling all to one quality. In the Prague experiment of socialism, which was a very well rich and educated country after World War II, was standing on good, solid economic ground with a great tradition of philosophy. If you just imagine that our first president of the independent Czechoslovakia in 1918, Masaryk, who was, I think his wife was American, was a philosopher, a real philosopher president who made his final thesis, doctorate by Edmund Husserl, the founder at Phenomenology. And the theme of his doctorate thesis was the suicide. Okay, so you see, if you have a president like that, it means something. That's why our relationship to phenomenology, because Husserl was born on the territory of Bohemia, Moravia, exactly. Our devotion to phenomenology is solid. And so we say, would not it be possible to explain all what Mr. Lash is putting into a kind of cloak of cosmology and Gnosticism, well-meant Gnosticism? It is not the old Gnosticism with the demiurge. It is what we fully agree with. It is the Sophianic Gnosis. But nevertheless, it is a super system of vast perspective and enormous powers clashing and galaxies almost colliding. And we from Prague say with Nietzsche, maybe it's all just projection and necessary projection. Because according to Nietzsche, all what happens necessarily. So we would say the Semitic mythogem is a necessary cloud, a dark cloud, which is an emanation of a thick and degenerated mind, but nevertheless an illusion. And the Sophianic myth and the Gnostics of pre-Christian time is a beautiful flowering cloud, an emanation of a healthy body and beautiful lifestyle in the pre-Christian Europe and all other localities on the planet Earth. But nevertheless, a necessary illusion. And so the two necessary illusions clash. And as the soul phenomena manifest in bodily phenomena, then it will become real. Madness or love will bring real deeds, real flowers. What does it mean? What does it mean? What does it mean? And we have just experimented like a child. It has a slightly therapeutic touch, because if it is so, therapy is more important than war. The warriors may be changed to psychiatrists and psychologists and bards, and they're trying to persuade the enemy side by beautiful pictures and by addressing her lost childish soul. Here the Klagesian paradigm comes into value, because all these evil proponents of the transhumanism, or mad proponents, or decadent and life-hating, according to Nietzsche, these resentment types and psychopath of transhumanism and New World Order and Great Reset must have been children. They must have been children. If they were not synthesized in some laboratories, or if they don't come through some time portals from some other time epochs or even some other planets. So they must have been children, and somewhere in the development of the child something went wrong, okay, and the therapy would be a remedy in that case, not the war. Objection: neurophysiologists tell us that psychopaths do not have a brain center active that enables the experience of empathy. That would be a serious objection, because you cannot, if somebody does not have a leg, you cannot teach him how to walk elegantly. So in this case, we would have to isolate the psychopath and explain this to them, and their warriors would be on the right place, because you cannot argue with the psychopath. He's simply mad, and he would kill you without remorse. So warriors have to be prepared for this contact with psychopath and simply pacify them without empathy. Suppress your own sympathy, because this is sympathy on the wrong place, not? Because it is not repeated, it is not answered. Now, your sympathy is not answered. It may be misused, even will be misused. So, okay, we shall see what will happen. We are able, what did I say, with the Ludwig Klages comes to play, that his idea of the acrons is phenomenological. His idea is cosmological and phenomenological, and my variation of it is purely phenomenological. His idea is that the entity X enters the human psyche in the phase, in the moment of Husserlian retention. This is what I like in Lash's work. I do not like it, I must be honest. I didn't yet read his exact description of the, let us say, hardware transition of the acrons to the human soul. I must postpone my criticism until I have read all how he explains it. But in my explanation, the hardware is explained exactly. In the Klagesian, it is not. It is only hinted. Klages says that the entity X enters the human soul field sometime like 10 to 15,000 years BC with the rise of writing, with the rise of slowing down the flow of perception, of the animal perception in the early man and emotional experience, to freeze it into symbols and later to signs and alphabet and then conceptual thinking and so on. This is a slowing down of the fluidity of perception and emotion. Okay? This would be the start of it, and it will then grow on until it freezes completely the flow of living experience into cognitive thinking, abstract models of life, and then it will destroy the life by technology that is manufactured, not created, that is manufactured, produced on the basis of these frozen models of life and cosmos and energy. Okay, I provide a special phenomenological addition to it, that I say the moment of entering, and then I have two versions. First I had to explain Klages to myself, to unite it with my knowledge of psychology and phenomenology, and I said, in the moment of Husserlian retention, read about it, where the soul mirror of a human soul has to turn quickly back in time and forward in time, metaphorically speaking, to be able to create a consistent, fluid image of the exterior world. In this moment of short stoppage, the essence of the achrontic, Lash would say, or entity X power enters the human soul, and it is in agreement with the child development that when the outside world of a 2-year-old child becomes so complex that the human soul in him, in the child, has to constitute, this is the term of phenomenology, and when the inner world arises in the soul, it's called constitution, not construction. When the constitution of the inner world is so complex that it must by necessity slow down to make it, then it will happen that the entity X enters the soul of the child as a virus in the moment of retention, and then it will remain dormant and will be still dominated for a long time by the great power of soul and body that is healthy and young, and as the child gets older and older and it becomes under the influence of already, slow and dry and ideologically petrified culture in school, ideologies, science, religion of the grown-ups, it will gain power of transformation. The entity X the acron in Lash's interpretation does not have, there we can agree, its own energy. It is a parasite. It only changes the constitution processes in the human soul. And we have added this little detail of Klages' very genius picture of the detour or the turning around of the direction of energy. From the ego, the impulses are like shots that reach out and hit the targets. This is the way the ego operates in the realm of perception even and cognition. We have to overcome the not understood and not perceived. The unclear scene will be made clearer by concentration, by sending a beam of intentional conscious energy to the foggy silhouette, and we shall dissolve it. It will become a clear picture. The same, studying a science, the confused data of perception and tests results will be penetrated by a logic beam of intentional scientific consciousness, and it will be understood. Understanding in concept is a subduction of perceptual experience to a conceptual framework. In the soul of a child or of a mystic who has become a child again, or of an artist, or of a lover who is embraced by the beauty of nature and his beloved, the direction of power is opposite. The direction comes from outside the soul. When the ego is dissolved, it does not send its intentional beam of understanding, subduing, persuasion, and so on. No, the soul becomes a cloud again, morphogenetic cloud, and it's being drawn passively into some other cloud that is nearby, that is of similar quality, and which by necessity is drawing this smaller cloud to itself. So the force is attraction of the similar, repulsion of the dissimilar. So this is it how I explain it. And I made one step further, say, okay, I'll do away even with the entity X of Klages and say, this is how it happens, purely phenomenologically. And the moment of the birth of the ego is completely natural in all human beings, that when the constitution of the outside world, or maybe even the constitution of the inner world, of body perceptions and emotional experiences, when it becomes so complex, then a center must be born that will somehow sift it, that will somehow organize it, that will somehow oversee it. And that is what we see in young children today, that they are losing the, animal-like epoch of very young childhood. Too early do they become conscious. And then what? There's another interesting idea. Why would the Semitic nations become masters of this manipulation? why would their ego be so strong? Isn't it because they spend traditionally all the childhood in text analysis, always time reading and reading and reading and explaining and arguing, and the society around them is full of observation of rules, which somehow are opposite to the instinctual drives of a child. So that is a system of ego arousal in the very early age, and then ego solidifying, and this means losing the touch with the body and the soul as it is naturally, pulsating, and losing the touch with the greater soul of Mother Nature and the love and bodily experience of her beauty in sport, in adventure, in love, and whatever. So then you will see how this culture would solidify into a resentment culture, and there follows all what Nietzsche had to say about it. And that it is possible is the expression of a degeneration of weaker and weaker bodies and stronger abstract intellects. That the other races have been subdued by this narrative has, again, a very simple explanation. They degenerate also. If they would be strong, like Nietzsche describes in somewhere in Genealogy of Morals, the original strong warrior of this kind of noble race, firstly, he would not at all notice that he is being obstructed by some resentment-filled, envious degenerate. He would simply not notice it, because this does not exist in his world. And if he would notice it, if this shouting and talking and nonsense, jabbering and standing in his way would become, too much, he would simply crush it without thinking about it, like a fly that molests you. That was the expression of the healthy life. It simply goes on, does not care. But when this life force exhausted, then naturally you tend to think about what, may it not be immediately when you become ill. Everybody knows that. If you are ill and weak, you wish not to be ill and weak. And if it takes a long time, you search for a realm in which you can escape, be it a movie, be it a book, be it a discussion with a friend who helps you. But you cannot be all the time, looking at movies and discussing with friends. Then when you are alone, you have to make the decisive jump. If you feel inside that this is the end, your ego will cease to exist, then either you have to expel the ego in an ecstasy of death, heroic death, as Nietzsche was also asking for. Why wait until you are like a bundle of impossible bodily reactions and you lie in an old house and you wait for the functions to stop and you are totally dependent on help from outside and you do not experience any ecstasy? Why wait? So, with the last power, you will ride on into an impossible battle. if you cannot lose your ego in this way, you must jump into a parallel reality, to some other world in which all will be explained cognitively, and one part of it will be the final transition without a body into this different realm of pure bliss and energy. That is completely natural. You don't need any religious concept. You will develop it completely by yourself. And that is why in nations and in ethnic groups where disease was dominant, where the body weakness was dominant, such systems would arise. So Nietzsche's advice, and the advice of the socialist sports hero, and the advice of Sparta is, more stress on bodily training in early childhood, especially for men, for boys. Because where do you want to achieve the warrior mentality? If the warrior mentality is, something which you read in the books, you would like to be like that, like the Knights of the Round Table. You watch the movies and so on, and then you go to a bar and drink a Coke and say, this was great. And no, it's not enough. Whereas if you spend your childhood in a training area with great warriors who really are masters of their sport, and they teach you and they recognize in you that you have the ability, and you have an old, as I have had, an old master fencer who spends like every day in silence 1 or 2 hours with you, teaching you the finesse of fencing. And when you are exhausted and you can't go on, he stands there solidly like a rock, and first he does all what you do first, and then he stands there like a rock and waits until your bodily energy recovers and says to you in a heroic and yet fatherly tone, and listen, this is the moment the training is most effective, because you are going over the edge of the so far what you have achieved now. Nietzsche would say you are going over the edge of man becoming a superman. So this would be my advice for all Gnostics who do not want to lose themselves in those naturally necessary dreams of cosmic or archontic narrative. Well, this said, I like Lash's dramatic speech, which shows to me that he is really, truly naming his experiences. This is very rare, and so my admiration to him is undoubtedly solid and pure, and I would like to, get into a kind of warrior-like duel of life experience, not only of ideas. This is already old. Comparing ideas, you can do this at universities. No, I have no interest for that. Comparing lifestyle, going for a walk in the mountains, working on a farm, playing tennis, go swimming, and so on, exercising qigong, below a waterfall, and then see what this mixture will bring. I repeat, I am able to explain for myself the whole of Sophianic narrative with pure phenomenology. Husserl, Heidegger, Nietzsche, Ludwig Klages, Krishnamurti. Central is the Minoan culture as a model of culture that was long before all Indo-European European settlements and long before the Semitic settlements, even though you could say the Semitic settlements were also very old, yes, but they were separated. And it is by the affinity of the Semitic world view with the Indo-European world view that they could merge. Finally, that Rome could adopt the Hebrew narrative of the one patriarchal God, as John Laplacius rightly pointed out, that the Romans, then they were losing the elites, the Roman elites. When they were losing the military power, they grab the ideological power of the Hebrew narrative and unite the state power with the religious power. And then it goes on. And later they again will be fighting each other in the wars of Middle Ages, where the kings realize, shit, I don't have to listen to what the Roman Pope says. I have my army, I can march in and demolish it all. Let him show me. Let his priest, make the magic. What will come out of that? Nothing. So the priests had to be very smart and infiltrate the closest relatives of the kings to make them neurotic somehow. A woman that has been used very much in the intrigues of all power centers is a factor that is really dangerous, and even for my practical life experience, because women were the ones that mostly kind of shattered and shaked my clear Minoan warrior-like worldview, because they were intriguing. Well, I don't take that evil from them, because they were beautiful and they have given me wonderful experiences, but they were not the high priestesses of Great Mother of Minoan Crete. They could not navigate. They didn't know the herbs properly. They could not jump over the Minoan ball. They could not spend days in darkness below the earth during the initiation. And so after all, they became, I would say, slightly tired. That was the main impulse of treachery. Simply physically tired, because they could not go on this heroic adventure. And they were already modern, feministically touched women who wanted to be understood, even though they didn't understand themselves properly, but they wanted to be understood. And then they were either broken due to their weakness by their surroundings and became somebody else, because the envy is enormous. This certainly John Laplace would agree that the envy of those your relatives or people who are close to you somehow geographically, once they realize that you live a full life, adventurous, beautiful in the arms of the Great Mother and creative, and that you can be alone, you don't need them. Yeah, they become hateful and angry and become scheming. Nietzsche has this very well explained in the Geology of Morals. The moral of resentment cannot stand alone. It cannot say to itself, well, I am weak, I am nothing special. I'm weak, I am nothing special. The recording device has fallen down. And that's it. I have to do as best as I can, and I'm not fortunate, and that will be it. No, they look at those who are successful and happy and radiate life and say, "Nay, I cannot accept this, because when I see it, I am angry that I am not like that." So what is the solution? Destroy them. Remove them from my eyesight. They must be destroyed, because otherwise I cannot go to sleep, because I am full of envy. So the envy of your relatives and of your people and institution, people around you, will destroy you if they can. If they cannot, they will destroy your close ones to punish you if your close ones are not strong enough. So the women in my company who went on the great adventure either were destroyed by their own families and surrounding due to the envy they experience even against their own children. Isn't it terrible? If your daughter lives suddenly a beautiful life of adventure and love, the parents hate it because they don't know it, and they destroy her. They cannot destroy you. And then you have to be a philosopher enough, and a Nietzschean enough to say, well, what happens necessarily. To ask for a change is what happens. One change means to ask to change the whole universe in the past, or at least the history of the planet. All the causal chain of cause and effect would have to be changed so that the present moment looks different. In our new conception of time, which you have heard in my second lecture, which is the time as an ever-growing, condensed, present moment, it means that it is even more difficult. You cannot simply go back somewhere in time and change something. This is so. But theoretically, you can imagine it if you have a linear conception of time. But if you have a circular, condensed theory of time, that everything is really present as an effect in the ever-growing present moment, and you can't change anything. It's growing as it is growing. So, don't worry if you lose somebody through treachery or weakness. Nietzsche says the pity was the last sin, and quote unquote, of the of Zarathustra, that he pitied those weak ones, the ugly ones, the abandoned ones, those who didn't have life force enough, he pitied them. And this is what he had to throw away, because they cannot be helped. And what they do, they will get the helping hand and pull you down to themselves, by telling you, you should be ashamed for your health and your beauty and your power. And so this is a great problem. Certainly, as far as education, pedagogy, medicine, and so on, everything must be done to make the best conditions for all children on the planet. This is my utopia I'm talking about. Everything must be done. They all have to get the best chances, best food, best education, training, and loving company of, if the parents cannot do it, there must be men and women who feel it truly, that they enjoy living with children, but really living and really giving them their energy. That all must be done. But no excuses if somebody doesn't make it. It was not possible simply. And no, envious looks, resentments toward those who go very fast forward and who are really like gods. No resentment, no stopping them, sending them immediately to the best temples, best training center, best schools, where men and women of quality are enjoying again their company, because they are bringing some new, as John Lash would say, ongoing, adventure of the new gnosis, the new gnosis of body and soul energies and planetary biospheric energies. So this is a gnosis, which is Nietzsche, Klages, Heidegger, maybe also certainly morphogenesis theory of Rupert Sheldrake, Lovelock Gaia theory, but always with the discerning eye of, is it a compensation of weakness? Is it a dream? Is it something we wish and make a film about it so that we have clicks on YouTube and make money on that? Or is it a ripe falling fruit of the tree of life, which must have grown and which must have fallen and which will bring forward new healthy seeds, new healthy trees? And in it, the stage of a child is symptomatic. One day, when you understand it all, when you live it all through, you must throw it all away and start to experiment with the childish openness, because otherwise you cannot be drawn into those larger morphogenetic fields of power, beauty to come, as John Chevalier nicely says. Oh, see you in the beauty to come. Goodbye. La, 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 la. Well,
I'm sailing away, set an open course for the virgin sea, 'cause I've got to be to face a life that's ahead of me. On board, I'm the captain, so climb aboard. We'll search for tomorrow on every shore, and I'll try, oh Lord, I'll try to carry on. Reflections in the waves spark my memory. Some happy, some sad. I think of childhood friends and the dreams we had. We lived happily forever, so the story goes. But somehow we missed out on the part of gold.